Marcus wiped the last of the syrup off his hands and glanced at the clock above the diner counter. 6:47 in the morning, and he had already been on his feet for 2 hours. That was just life now. Coffee brewing before sunrise, lunches packed before the school bus came, bills spread across the kitchen table after his daughter fell asleep. He didn't complain about any of it. Complaining required energy he simply didn't have left. He pushed through the glass door of Hargrove and Mills Financial Tower with his maintenance cart, the wheels squeaking against the marble floor in that embarrassing way they always did. The lobby was already filling up with people, in suits that cost more than his monthly rent. He had learned early on to keep his eyes down in places like this. Not out of shame exactly, just practicality. People moved faster when they didn't have to acknowledge you. He was refilling the sanitizer station near the east elevator bank when he heard it. A sound so out of place in this cathedral of corporate ambition that it stopped him cold. Crying, 3 voices, all at once. He turned slowly, and what he saw made something shift deep in his chest. 3 little girls, identical in the most breathtaking way, stood in a cluster near the revolving door. They couldn't have been older than 4, maybe 5. Each of them wore a tiny navy coat with brass buttons, patent leather shoes that were clearly expensive, and expressions of absolute terror. One was clutching a stuffed rabbit so tightly its ear was bent completely sideways. Another had pressed both palms flat against her cheeks, like she was trying to hold her own face together. The third was simply staring at the ceiling with tears streaming silently down her face, as if she had decided that the universe itself had personally betrayed her. Around them, the lobby moved like a river parting around rocks. Men in expensive watches checked their phones and stepped wider. Women with leather briefcases glanced over and glanced away. A security guard looked in their direction twice, but stayed planted behind his desk. A receptionist craned her neck, seemed to calculate something, and returned to her computer screen. Nobody stopped. Nobody knelt down. Nobody asked if they were okay. Marcus stood there for a moment watching this, and he felt something old and familiar rise up in him, the same thing he felt every time his daughter woke up from a nightmare and called out into the dark. It wasn't a decision, really. It never was. He simply moved. He left his cart where it was and walked toward the 3 little girls with the same calm, unhurried energy he brought to everything. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He was just a man who understood what scared children needed, which was someone who wasn't scared themselves. He crouched down so that he was at their level, his knees popping in a way that would have embarrassed him in any other moment. And he looked at all 3 of them evenly before he said the 3 quietest, simplest, most powerful words he knew how to say. I see you. Not stop crying. Not where's your mommy. Not you're okay, because they clearly weren't okay. And children always know when adults are lying to them. Just those 3 words. I see you. The one holding the rabbit blinked. The one with her palms on her cheeks dropped her hands an inch. The one looking at the ceiling slowly brought her gaze back down to earth and aimed it, with enormous brown eyes, directly at him. We can't find Daddy, the rabbit one whispered. Okay, Marcus said, nodding like this was completely solvable, because in his experience most things were. What's your daddy's name? Daddy, said the second one with full sincerity. Despite everything, Marcus almost smiled. Fair enough. What does he look like? Tall, said the third, the one who had been staring at the ceiling. She said it with such exhausted certainty, like she had considered many adjectives and settled on the only one that truly mattered. Tall works, Marcus said. Can you tell me his job? What does he do here? The rabbit girl straightened up slightly with the particular pride of a child who has been asked something she actually knows the answer to. He's the boss of everything, she said. Marcus absorbed this. The boss of everything, he repeated. Of the whole building, the second one confirmed. He nodded slowly, keeping his face perfectly neutral. Then he stood up, took the hand of the one nearest to him. She gave it without hesitation, which broke something open in his heart, and said, All right, let's go find the boss of everything. He walked them to the security desk himself, holding one hand while a second girl latched onto. His cart handle and the third stayed. So close to his heels she nearly tripped him twice. He told the guard calmly and clearly that these 3 children needed their father located immediately, and something in his tone, not angry, not demanding, just absolutely certain that this would happen, made the guard reach for the phone without a single moment of bureaucratic hesitation. What happened in the next 4 minutes was something Marcus would never quite be able to explain. The lobby, which had been thoroughly indifferent 60 seconds ago, suddenly became very interested in these 3 little girls. A woman from the elevator offered them each a granola bar from her bag. The receptionist appeared with a box of tissues. 2 men near the coffee station actually put their phones away. He didn't notice any of it, because he was watching the elevator doors. When they opened, the man who stepped out was exactly as described. Tall, dark coat, the kind with the collar that folded back just so. The face of someone who had spent years learning to look unreadable in public, and who was currently failing at it completely, because his eyes were scanning the lobby with naked, undisguised terror, the kind that no amount of money or authority can train out of a parent's face when their children are missing. He saw them and went completely still for 1 full second. Then he crossed the lobby in about 4 strides and dropped to his knees on the marble floor of his own building in front of his entire morning staff, and pulled all 3 of his daughters into his arms at once. They crashed into him like small waves. The rabbit got crushed between them and nobody cared. The crying started again, but different now. The kind of crying that is actually relief, wearing the only face it knows. Marcus watched this from a respectful distance, his hand resting on his cart, and felt the quiet satisfaction of a man who had done a small thing that turned out to matter. He was already turning to go when he heard footsteps behind him. "Excuse me." He turned. The man was standing now, daughters orbiting him at various attachment points, one on his hip, one gripping his coat, one holding 3 of his fingers in both her fists. His eyes were red at the corners. He was looking at Marcus with an expression that was difficult to categorize. Not quite gratitude, something rawer than that. "You stopped," the man said. It wasn't a question, but Marcus answered it anyway. Seemed like someone should. "Everyone else," the man started, then stopped himself. He seemed to be recalibrating, choosing different words. "I'm Richard Hargrove," he said finally, as if this explained something. And in this building, it clearly did. The security guard had stiffened slightly. The receptionist had gone very professional. Marcus nodded. "Marcus Webb." Richard Hargrove looked at him for a long moment. "My ex-wife dropped them off this morning while I was in a call. They were supposed to wait in my office, but they wandered." He paused. "I should have been there. I should have—" He stopped again. His jaw tightened. A man who was used to being in control, visibly fighting with the version of himself that wasn't. "They were brave," Marcus said simply. "They told me you were tall and the boss of everything." That was enough to go on. Something shifted in Richard Hargrove's face then. Something genuine broke through, and it looked so unfamiliar there, like sunlight in a room that hadn't been opened in a long time. The rabbit girl leaned away from her father's chest and looked at Marcus very seriously. "Are you a daddy?" she asked. "I am," Marcus said. "Do you have girls?" "One. Her name's Amara. She's 7. The girl considered this with the gravity it deserved. Then she held out the rabbit. It was a significant gesture, and Marcus understood it as such. "You can hold Henry," she said, "just for a minute." He took the rabbit with both hands carefully, the way you accept something that belongs to someone else's whole world. He held it for exactly 1 minute while she watched him do it. Then he gave it back and she seemed satisfied. Richard Hargrove called him that evening. Marcus almost didn't answer. He didn't recognize the number, and he was helping Amara with a science project involving baking soda and entirely too much vinegar. But something made him pick up. It was a brief call. Richard Hargrove was not by nature a man of many words, or at least, he hadn't been for a long time. But he said enough. He said that Marcus's position at the building was secure as long as he wanted it, and that his pay would reflect what the work was actually worth, which it apparently had not been before. He said that the building's childcare arrangement for parents was being reviewed, because what happened that morning should not have been possible. He said one other thing, quietly, at the end of the call. The way people say the truest things, almost as an afterthought, like they're hoping you'll catch it without them having to hold it directly. "My girls are still talking about you," he said. "The one with the rabbit, Sophie. She told her sisters at dinner that you were a real prince. I don't say that to embarrass you. I say it because she's 5 and she doesn't use that word for anything." A pause. "I just thought you should know what you are to them." Marcus sat with that for a long time after he hung up, listening to Amara narrate the volcano she was building, her voice filling the apartment with all the ordinary, irreplaceable music of a child who feels safe. He had not knelt down that morning to be a hero. He had not stopped because he expected anything in return. He had stopped because 3 small people needed someone to see them, and he knew what it cost a child to be invisible, and he was not willing to be one more adult who looked away. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do fits inside 3 words. Sometimes the whole world turns on whether someone decides to kneel.